Welcome to a football show Monday edition. Paul Kuharsky, Braden Gall, Sinkers, Beverages, Shotgun Willie's Barbecue. Good morning. Good afternoon, I should say. Paul, how are you?
I'm well. I wear this hat briefly in tribute to Sinkers. Then we know it's inappropriate to wear hats on podcasts of a professional variety. And so I will remove it.
Okay. All right. There's the buildup and the delivery by Mr. One, Paul Kuharsky.
And I'm not wearing a collared shirt only because I'm wearing a sponsor shirt.
I think you promoting yourself and your brand, paulkuharsky.com, pay-per-view journalism, and me promoting our sponsor, also completely appropriate. If you want to jump into the comment section, please do so. Please do so. Jump into the comment section. We can discuss all different types of things because the strangest questions Paul has for me sometime at the end of the pod ends up stimulating much conversation. So maybe we'll do that a little bit. We got a lot of stuff to get to today. Of course, Cam Ward and the Titans will be on the field on Tuesday this week for all of us to look at on tomorrow. And we'll have a second crack at him with the team. So we'll have some fun with that. Expectations around the offensive line I'm interested in today. I'd like to discuss because it's one of those nuts that this team has not been able to crack no matter how many different ways they go about trying to make it better. It does feel like this year, this camp, this group of players might be a little bit better. But one storyline that I don't think we've talked a lot about on this show, and I don't think has been talked about a lot in the ether of Titans football, is the health and timetable around Lloyd Cushenberry. Great stuff by you up at paulkuharsky.com, so go check that out. JC Latham had some things to say on Bussin' with the Boys, of course, about expectations around Cam Ward. I don't have a problem with what he had to say, but we'll talk about it. And I saw a face today on TV. I sit down, I drop the kids off at summer camp, I come back, I get to work, I turn on the TV, and lo and behold, there's a familiar face up there. So we'll get to all of that. And it wasn't PK or me for that matter. So we'll get to all that today on the show. Please swing by Sinkers Beverages, 4-time liquor store of the year in Nashville. Make sure you go check them out. They're doing great work up there in East Nashville. Search Uber Eats, have that booze delivered directly to your house. They've got all kinds of special select options for special select occasions, whatever that might be. They've got you covered, whether it's wine, whether it's liquor, whether it's mixed drink, beers. They got THC beverages. They got all kinds of good stuff up there, so go check them out. And Shotgun Willie's Barbecue, open 11 a.m. to 3 p.m., Wednesday through Sunday, Paul.
Finally, we're getting the time on this edition of a football show. Previously, it had been kept a secret and only shared on the Nick Suss edition.
It's state secret for sure. Deep state information. Here's the deal. Anyone who knows barbecue knows nighttime barbecue. You can't start smoking meats at 2 a.m, get all that meat smoked, and then just have it sit under a lamp for the nighttime rush. You got to sell it at lunchtime. Those are the best barbecue joints. Shotgun Willie's Barbecue. Okay. I turned on the TV today, Paul, and I saw John Robinson wearing a nice plaid shirt. He looks like John Robinson. And he's on there I know they do this with a bunch of players, current and former players. They do this all the time, but he's on there for the entire show co-hosting. So I was like, oh, I wonder if he's going to say anything. We're at 1:00 on Monday after 4 hours of John Robinson content, and I haven't seen anything break through the algo yet, PK. So I'm assuming that means he didn't say anything interesting.
Yeah, well, John Robinson's pretty good at stuff like that, but it must have been, as you're suggesting, and this would be my conclusion, that it was pretty vanilla. That nothing he said. I mean, the only thing on Twitter is a rather poor picture of him, which is a disservice to him. Somebody's doing 3 or 4 hours of television. You could catch a picture of them with their eyes closed. People blink.
Right.
So if you take a picture look, I just blinked right there. If you took a picture of me right there, I would look worse than I do with my eyes open, though I don't look great on here because I'm fat. So
you look better than JR.
Oh, well, that's an insult to JR, but, that nothing has come out over what he did on there says something. I'm surprised. I mean, he's done zero media. As far as I know, that's the first he's emerged. I don't think he's talked to anybody on or off the record at all. And I haven't checked in with him in a long time. I've obviously been really hard on him as the footprints of what his failures late have had a more and more extended bearing on the Titans, which isn't entirely his fault because the people who followed him up have done a poor job of fixing things. Adam Peters fixed Washington quickly. And so that takes the sting out of his predecessor's failures in quicker fashion and kind of helps fix their reputation faster, right? That's not happened here. And so John Robinson's, the echoes of his bad moves remain. The A.J. Brown trade still hurts this team. The Isaiah Wilson pick still hurts this team. The Caleb Farley pick still hurts this team and things like that. So I got to understand why he's not eager to resurface in Nashville. Even Joe Rexroad, I know really tried to get him for the Derrick Henry farewell piece, which was, a positive story about how Derrick Henry wound up in Nashville and told the story about Blake Bedingfield kind of starting to plant that seed and working malarkey and, what happens if DeMarco Murray goes down and we lose our identity and all of that, which would have been a good occasion for Robinson to say, yeah, people convinced me.
Oh no. This happened on Thursday, didn't it, y'all? He froze up on us on Thursday. And I had Nick Suss there to help me and save me through all of this. Ed Henry says, do owners have to pay their execs they let go if they get a TV gig? Or is that only applicable if they get another job in the NFL? I doubt that the NFL and that I doubt that TV has any implication on I like where the comments are going with all of this. They are, of course, blaming John Robinson's, I guess, high-level CIA ability to attack our computer screens, to attack Paul Kuharsky. No, I'm under the impression, and he'll jump back in the room with us. I am under the impression that Rand Carthon NDA stuff that he had to sign, that a lot of that there's a window for it of time, and it doesn't matter if you get a job. You still can't say the things you can say, otherwise you'd be in breach of contract. I certainly don't think that the non-compete or in our industry for Paul and I, that's our, I had a non-compete when I went to work for 102.5. I had when I was at 104.5, there was a non-compete. So I don't think that exists in football, but I don't think it applies to crossing over industries. Like if you go work for a TV station, I don't think that would affect him. So I think that's the first answer to that question. Trevor says, yeah, he jumped onto the podcast, a random podcast that he saw last week. Very boring. Johnny Buck says he's a robot. Jabari says Frozen PK is the best PK. And yes, Z Dean with the DDoS attack. Speaking of a tough screen grab by Josh. So there you go. It's his analytics department at work. I like that, Z Dean. That's good. So I had two questions, and I'm going to pose these to all of you since we're all hanging out here together. And when Paul jumps back in, I'll bring him back. The first thing is why he's doing this now is an interesting question. And I'm going to save that for Paul because I do want Paul to be a part of that because he's as much a nerd about the media stuff as I am. What I find very interesting, and you all can chime in on this, what I find very interesting is the John Robinson legacy. Because I like Paul, I think it's easy to be hard on JR for the decisions he made in the back half of his tenure, and the draft picks, the trade, all of that stuff was too much to overcome. Unforgivable sins, for lack of a better term. You can't fumble all your first round picks and trade away like the most high profile superstar, maybe athlete they've ever had, not name, I guess, not at running back, I suppose. But I do think that John Robinson's tenure and his career and his legacy, whatever you want to call it, as a Tennessee Titans general manager, I think is going to age very well as we get further away from some of the mistakes that he made that were, again, too big to overcome at the end of his career or at the end of his tenure here. I think it is hard to erase every part of the success that he created because, and again, I know it's easy for fans about, you drafted Isaiah Wilson, Caleb Farley, on and on down the list. He also had a ton of great draft picks. He also chose to move on from Mike Mularkey. He wasn't really the guy who chose Mike Mularkey. That was sort of chosen for him. He then decided, which I think is one of the most complicated and difficult decisions you could ever do, which is a coach who's got 2 9-win seasons, to fire him, who took him from 2 wins to 9 wins, by the way. to fire him after a playoff win against the Chiefs on the road with what looks to be a roster with some core pieces that were getting better, and to then take a risk on a guy who'd never been a coach before. I think that one singular decision should give him enough credit to look at that era and say it's kind of John Robinson's doing. The reason they had Ryan Tannehill on discount, an incredibly shrewd move by John Robinson. A lot of the second, third, fourth, fifth round draft picks in the early years, a lot of the free agent signings, even though they were small, were very productive and paid off. And the big move to hire Mike Vrabel. So I'm not suggesting that one should erase the other. The good shouldn't erase the bad, and the bad should not erase the good. But I do think as time goes on, and 15 years from now, we're all sitting around, hopefully having a nice, tall, cool, frosty one from Sinker's Beverages, eating some Shotgun Willie's barbecue even, that we're all sitting around and we're going, that was a pretty good run we had there for a few years. He's a flawed person. We all are. And I don't necessarily like the way he was on the practice field, the way he was always on the practice field with the chaw in his mouth, spit and dip with a whistle, twirling it in each drill. I don't approve of a lot of the decisions he made at the end of the tenure, but I do think it's a more complex legacy than just these were terrible picks and this was a terrible decision and et cetera, and boom, he didn't trade A.J. Brown, and we should, never remember anything good that he did. On that note, Paul Kuharsky, unfrozen and back and better than ever. How are you, sir?
Sorry about that. When my screen went to spinny circles, I didn't know if we were still on or not. I kept talking. It was pretty good. But then it just went away.
So I'll let you scroll through the comments if you want to go back and rewatch. All right. So Trevor said, this is in response to Trevor says, this is why Carthon talked about all of his favorite music during that interview. I think there's a level of addiction they have in the sport. They have to the sport, I guess I should say, from Ed here in the comment section. He needs to be connected somehow. That I don't disagree with. And I think some of us in the media have that as well. I'll scroll through some of these comments, PK, but I want you to finish. I was talking about John Robinson's legacy and how it's going to age over time. But I want you to kind of finish maybe where you were going. Oh my God, it happened again. You can't get good help these days in the media. You know what I mean? The pinwheel of death. Wow. Okay, now I have time to get through the comments, so I do appreciate you guys here for bearing with us. Thank you. Z Dean says, I do think if the A.J. Brown trade never happened, he would have had at least another year or so, even with the bad draft picks. I technically agree with that. I think the A.J. Brown trade was the straw that broke the camel's back. I also think, and this is I think this is lost in the Mike Vrabel reaction, because that's the thing everybody thinks of, right? The visual of Mike Vrabel reacting to the trade happening during the draft night. What are they going to do if he walks? Like, what are they going to do if he didn't want to be here? Because I don't think he ever wanted to be here necessarily after he established himself. A.J. Brown, that is. What does the team actually do? Like, what happens if he goes into contract negotiation and the Titans can't get him signed, and he just decides he's never going to agree to a deal, even if the Titans offer him a great deal? I think it's more complicated than that. But again, I tend to look back on these very complicated decisions and try to give a little grace. Doesn't mean you aren't held accountable. I think John Robinson should have been held accountable. But I have a feeling as time goes on, we're going to look back on a lot of those moves and the tenure in general, the whole period of time to go from one of the worst teams in the league to the AFC Championship game. Mike Vrabel is probably the best coach, I would guess, since Jeff Fisher. I don't think there's really up for debate there. And to be a 1 seed, there's so much good there. Derrick Henry is, who's more popular? Who's a better Tennessee Titan than Derrick Henry? Well, that's John Robinson's doing, and Mike Vrabel's coaching. So I don't know. I think it's going to be a really interesting tenure to look back on when we do evaluate John Robinson. Now, why is he out there in the media today? Why is, to PK's point, he does not speak much. He has not given any interviews. He has not been a part of this at all. And why on June 2nd, when granted there's very little happening, why is now the time, PK, that John Robinson is out there doing all of this to be available and all of a sudden have an opinion and a take and a personality in front of the camera?
I'll say something like, well, what I think is, and then I'll cut out and we'll keep people on the edge of their seats. This is shameful performance by Xfinity, which I've tried to cut the cord as much as I can. I still need internet in my house. It seems the most practical way. This morning, it's been in and out. I don't understand what's going on. I want to berate them while I'm on the air, as long as I'm on the air.
You don't want them to cut the cord right now, though.
Well, this thing could go yellow or orange at any moment. I should have it on my lap so you
I'm a fiber guy.
I think fiber is a little bit of an issue in my community, which is a problem. So I'm just going to plow ahead and we'll see what happens. It's like pick a over under on the clock. I don't know. My guess would be this is the beginning of a reemergence, right? I don't know if NFL Network's calling John Robinson out of the blue and saying, "Hey, do you want to guest host?" And he's gone, "Oh yeah, now that you mention it, this would be a good time to reemerge." I would think it's far more likely he and his representatives are calling them and saying, "John would like to reemerge a little bit. You have anything for him?" And I've heard that he might be launching a podcast. So if that's the case, this could be the beginning of John Robinson reemerging. And one, he would be pretty good at this if he lets his guard down. He's far enough removed from a lot of people that he worked with and that played for him that he could maybe be super candid. And if he's super candid at it, he would be super good at it. And then if he's super good at it, we've seen a lot of people move from TV to jobs. Mike Mayock and John Lynch and others that I'm forgetting. It's not as ridiculous an idea as it used to be. And he was for 3+ years a very successful GM in the NFL. Got a couple interviews for second chances. And it's one route to it. If you're trying to rehabilitate your image would be to go on TV and be very good.
I think that all makes total sense. And by the way, I want to respond to Sam here, who says, I guess he's responding to my take about how the AJ Brown saga could have ended. What do you mean he had another year plus control with the tag for 2 more? You play hardball. Come on. So that was in response to sort of, and I want you to chime in on this. I think as time goes on, I hope, while all of the negatives cannot be removed from the resume, all the positives cannot either. And he was a tremendous general manager for a short period of time, made a bunch of really great decisions and totally turned the franchise around, and made a very risky decision, 2 major ones, to fire a playoff coach with a winning record, to hire somebody who'd never coached before. And it worked. They got better. And honestly, the Ryan Tannehill move was something I thought was not necessarily a smart move at the time, but you got him, and you got the Dolphins to pay for 3/4 of his salary, and he took you to an AFC Championship game. I'm curious.
Didn't think that was a good move to get a quarterback of Ryan Tannehill's caliber to back up Marcus Mariota? That was a fantastic move.
I know it's a great move. I didn't think it was. I didn't think very highly of Ryan Tannehill, and I didn't think it was. We can rehash my own opinions from 2018 or whatever. I'm just curious what you think his legacy is, or how fans view him as time goes on. And it's not the same thing here, but I always go to the Bills Super Bowl run and they lose 4 straight. And in the moment we're like, oh, these guys are losers. And now 30 years later, I'm like, that was extraordinary. Like the legacies can change over time. And I'm curious how you think John Robinson will be viewed 10 years from now.
Well, I think his legacy's half good, half bad. The good didn't come all the way to fruition, and the bad had a longer lasting, worse taste. And again, like I said earlier, because his successors didn't do well to fix the bad, it's lasting even now, 3 years later. And so that's been problematic. But for those first, I'm calling it 3 years. I'm not sure if I'm completely accurate there. It came in 16. It started to go bad in 20. So 4 years, really, I think.
Weren't they the 1 seed? They were the 1 seed in 20.
Very good. Yeah. But that's when his draft, the COVID draft was terrible, and player acquisition started to go bad. But if you think about Tannehill and Murray and the Henry Byard draft, and then that one terrific draft, he was as good as anybody with his eyes on the prize in terms of feeding talent to his 2 coaches. So that was terrific. But then that stretch, I think, of those failed first round picks is probably as bad a stretch as anybody's had.
I want to touch on AJ Brown because I do think AJ Brown was clearly the straw that broke the back, and it's sort of the trade is, all that stuff. I'm just curious if they don't make the trade, like, is there a chance that ends well? Like, I'm not trying to play a choose your
own adventure. AJ Brown part.
Just like had they not traded him and they do something like play hardball with him, like what is the end game? I'm not sure AJ Brown was ever.
Well, you pay him and he's happy and everything goes back to normal and he's productive like he has been in Philly, and you've got one of the top 3 or 4 wide receivers in the game. Everything goes fine. Everything went fine for DK Metcalf until a couple of years later. Everything went fine with Deebo Samuel. Everything went fine with Terry McLaurin. Those were 3 other receivers that were in the same situation. Now, 2 of them, it turned out, didn't live up to expectations, but he was much more likely to be good. I think he was better than those other 2 guys. And Terry McLaurin is so beloved in Washington. It's ridiculous. I think he's the most beloved player I've seen on the road. Press corps was talking about this when we were up there. The fandom for Terry McLaurin, unbelievable. And that's what AJ Brown should be in Nashville.
I guess and maybe I need to clarify. There's no argument that if AJ Brown is on the team, that the team is not more fun, better, and more marketable and more entertaining and more enjoyable, and that he's a star. I'm not that he is. His talent and his role in the team are not really negotiable in my mind. There's part of me that believes it wasn't going to end the way Titans fans have in their minds of this like perfect Cinderella fairy tale ending where he plays for 15 years and he retires the greatest receiver of all time. And they have I think I want to make sure I get this right. Who added this? The Rayskull says AJ being on the roster extends the playoff window. My feeling is the best case scenario is that they play hardball with him. He chooses not to resign, and they do have an extra 2 years of great football from him, maybe 1 year franchise tag. But I don't know. There's part of me that just doesn't believe that it ends well. Like, and I don't mean that in like a dirty way. I just mean like he didn't want to be here. He wanted a big.
Why did they have to play hardball with him? Why couldn't they just bend? You finally have a premier wide receiver, which you haven't had for 25 years. It's one of the positions: quarterback, defensive end, wide receiver, cornerback, left tackle. I mean, that's what you build your team around. That's one of them. This team hasn't had one in forever. With his dynamic skill set, find a way to make it work. That's a big part of your job. That's John Robinson's failings more so than particularly with AJ Brown, that he didn't realize the importance of it, that he overestimated his ability to replace it, and that he couldn't get a deal done, and he got stubborn and ego got in the way.
And none of that I would even argue with. I just and I want to ask Sam again. I think that's cope on your part. No insult intended, but simply trying to manage your disappointment. If you're talking about me personally, I have no disappointment other than watching AJ Brown is fun like that on the football field. I don't care. I think a lot of you folks in the comments are hitting on the right thing, which is they didn't get enough in return because DK Metcalf also has been traded and didn't accomplish anything at Seattle.
They got 2 more years out of him, and and I don't think he was as good.
That's my feeling, is that it ends like that. Maybe they have 1 more season where he plays really well, but I just for some reason in the back of my head I'm like, I don't think AJ is gonna ever be here long term. I don't know. Maybe that's just me. Maybe I'm wrong on that. So that's my feeling.
Go to Rascal there. He says the issue wasn't just that J-Rob refused to pay AJ. It's that he refused to pay any of our skill position players outside of Henry. Who are these great skill position players that the Titans failed to pay? Titans never have good skill. Receiver is predominantly where the skill position players line up, and they haven't had any receivers. That's what makes the AJ Brown thing bigger. And you say outside of Henry, well, Henry was the star. And what tight end did they not pay that they should have paid? Jonnu Smith? I mean, arguable. Sure, but go on to do anything great.
10 million. So 10 million.
I don't know. For him. I don't know who this list is of skill position players that they failed to keep.
I think
most of them were old guys coming in, right? It failed with the Atlanta receiver. God, I can't
Julio Jones,
all pro Julio Jones. That was a failure. They tried with some of these guys; they were failures.
DeAndre was solid for a year, I guess. So Jason says, bare minimum, you don't replace him with Burks. You might not be able to go fill the hole, but you don't dig a deeper one, which then is Interesting here that Z Dean is going this other direction, which I think is an interesting thread to pull on here, especially in the middle of June. Hindsight is 2020, but trading AJ and then crashing out was the best outcome for the Titans. It sucked going through it, but that 1920 hit their ceiling by making the AFC Championship game. He continues by saying hitting the reset button was the best possible outcome in his opinion. Tannehill was never going to win the Super Bowl, no matter who was around him. I find that line of thinking to be very, first of all, insightful into your psychological situations, Dean. But I also, look, that's what Predators fans want right now. They want the total reset to happen and stop messing with this in between. Now they have the number 1 pick, and Cam Ward might be the guy. I don't think any of that was good or on purpose, obviously. But what do you make of that line of thinking?
Look, I don't know that I don't think they're winning the Super Bowl with Ryan Tannehill either. I just hate this idea that, like, if you can't win the Super Bowl with them, start over. Like, if you could get the number 1 seed the next year again, get the number 1 seed the next year again. If he's good enough to get you the number 1 seed, get into the playoffs and take your chances. Even if it's not the number 1 seed, even if it's the number 5 or 6 seed, go to the playoffs and take your chances. This idea, oh, well, we got the number 1 seed, we got to the playoffs with this guy, and he choked. Therefore, we're never going to the Super Bowl. What we should do is finish last in the league and get the number 1 pick and start over. Like, these are so far extremely different. Ryan Tannehill took them to the playoffs, what, 3 times? You don't want that? You don't want playoff games? I mean, Derrick Henry carried them through the first time.
He did start. So we were saying 2020 was the end. They were, I forgot about, they were 12-5. He was 12-5 as a starter in 2021. I saw it 2020, but then he got hurt the next year. So
but he can't win a Super Bowl. But he can't win a Super Bowl, so you can't go. I mean, how many quarterbacks can win the Super Bowl? So all these other teams that are playoff teams, but that probably aren't going to win the Super Bowl, should stop their pursuits, crumble it up, and start over. Well, I have news for you. The guys that they're going to go get to replace the quarterback they have that's good enough to get them in the playoffs, but not good enough to get into the Super Bowl, are probably going to be the same or worse, because there are probably 5 quarterbacks that could win the Super Bowl. And so this idea that if you don't have a guy that could win you the Super Bowl, you should smash everything up and go try to start again is folly, because it's a best case scenario that you wind up in the same place. Probably going to wind up in a lesser place. The Titans have wound up in a lesser place for how many years now? A significantly lesser place. Now, Tannehill ran out of time. He wasn't good anymore. But if Tannehill had been 27 and doing that, do you give up on Ryan Tannehill? You say Ryan Tannehill's a bad playoff quarterback, and what we need is for Ryan Tannehill to get better and go on a playoff run and not choke in the playoffs. Not, let's get rid of 27-year-old Ryan Tannehill who's losing in the playoffs because he doesn't win in the playoffs, and on a prayer, think we're going to find a kid who's going to do better in the playoffs.
So I don't. First of all, normally I'm on your side when it's you versus the comment section. PK versus comment section. Normally I'm on your side. I'm with the comment section on this one because I think there's a middle ground. That there is not. It's not as simple as win a Super Bowl or get rid of the guy. And part of this is my own personal opinion of Ryan Tannehill, going back to when they made the trade for him. I never thought he was any good. I didn't think he was a great player at Miami. I didn't think he was worthy of being drafted. That's my own failing because he came here and he was better here than I ever expected. I never thought that he was the right guy to take over. I thought he showed limitations all the time inside the offense. As long as the offensive line and Derrick Henry and the defense was playing great, he could operate within the system of an offense. I have that same feeling about like Jordan Love as a Packers fan. I'm like, sure. Jordan Love's a nice player, but I don't think he's worth the contract he's been given. And I don't know what the end game is going to be for Jordan Love because I don't think he operates outside the confines of an offense, which is what you have to be great.
Right.
Be a really great quarterback.
But again, there are only so many guys that operate out the confines of the offense. So then what you do is you do what the Titans did when they were really good then. You shape it as hard as you can for him to be in his best situations as often as you can, and you take it as far as you can go. And I prefer that to this unknown. Everybody thinks Cam Ward's going to be terrific. Cam Ward could suck. Like, you're betting on the unknown versus the known. Now, I'm saying a 27-year-old Ryan Tannehill operating in play action behind a good offensive line with Derrick Henry and a good defense. Will I take that over? Okay. Well, will
And
I
then they
take
ran
that?
its, and then it ran its course.
Okay, but will I take that over an imaginary Cam Ward, over an unknown Cam Ward with what they have growing right now? Yes, that's getting me to the playoffs, an AFC championship game, and a number 1 seed. Will I take in a 3-year span an AFC championship game and a number 1 seed over this unknown thing? Yes, I will. If I'm rooting.
Maybe there's a new way to come at this discussion because I'm interested in this discussion, and clearly the comment section is animated by this. Here's maybe a more interesting way to tie this into JR, which is with Tannehill at his age and price point, and with the rest of the roster, if all of those first round picks are good and contributing and starting, is that maybe a better way to look at this and saying, is Tannehill still good enough to get you to the playoffs routinely, to get you over, maybe a playoff win or two? Is he still worth the money?
We're not saying now, we're saying then.
Yeah. Then when Caleb Farley doesn't hit and Isaiah Wilson doesn't hit, and you make the trade and Treylon Burks doesn't hit, let's say all of that doesn't happen, and you do get an offensive lineman who's good. He doesn't have to be great, but he's a starter. You get a corner who's pretty good. Doesn't have to be great, but he's a starter. You don't trade A.J. Brown, and you keep A.J. Brown, and it's not Treylon Burks. Is there a totally different trajectory of the franchise? And I don't know what the answer is to that. My instincts are probably not. They might have had a better season or two. Maybe Vrabel's. I don't know. I think Tannehill falls off.
You get 2 more cracks at it with all of that going well. So you would have had an AFC championship game run and number 1 seed. And what was the other playoff appearance there? And blank.
Okay. So
what did they do with the other playoff appearance? They won one game. It was a malarkey year.
They beat the Chiefs on the road with Mariota in Malarkey's last game as the coach. Yeah. Then they fire him. They hire Vrabel in 18. They make the switch from Mariota to Tannehill in 19. They go to the AFC Championship game. They missed the playoffs for Vrabel's first year. 19, they go to the AFC Championship game with Tannehill taking over in the Denver game. I think it was week 4 or 5. Then they lose the wild card round in 2020. And then they come back and they're 12-5 in 2021 after back-to-back division titles. They lose the divisional round. That's the Bengals game, I believe, when they're the 1 seed. Then they go 7-10 the next year. So maybe that's the year in 2022 that they're in the playoffs with good draft picks in 19, 20, and 21. And not the A.J. Brown trade. All of a sudden, they're too good. They're 7-10. So a couple of good draft picks in A.J. Brown and a healthy Tannehill might get you to 10-7 and back in the playoffs. The following year, Tannehill's hurt already, and he's like 34 years old.
Yeah, he's too old.
So I don't the clock was ticking the whole time. I think.
They were getting old. But Rascal says here the best case scenario is the Titans end up like the Vikings. Worst case is they are what they are now. The Vikings haven't been to the championship game, have they? In this little run, Vikings haven't been.
I don't think so. They were
close. Were they the number 1 seed? I think they lost out on the number 1 seed. So you're underselling.
They lost the division. Now I think they won 14 games last year. They didn't even win the division. So
that's a bad comparison.
They lost. They did win the division in 22 3 years ago, and they were 13-4 and lost in the wild card round. So they didn't even get a.
So no number 1 seed and no championship game appearance. So it's an off comparison. Now Sam's right. The roster was aging. They were a little bit behind. If they had done it a little earlier, if Tannehill was a little bit younger, if A.J. Brown had been in the mix for the whole thing.
It's a lot of ifs.
Right, yeah.
But again, I'm trying to just work through because I find it interesting the big picture decisions franchises have to steer the franchise in a particular direction. And it's easy when your quarterback breaks down. Your general manager doesn't. You go on the road against the Eagles, and A.J. Brown does the whole deal, and you've already traded him, and it was a perfect storm for the Titans to hit a reset. It made it easy to do the decisions, to fire Robinson, to fire Vrabel, to fire Carthon. I would argue as well. All these things have kind of been easy to decide, and it would have been far more complicated if, again, a couple of those draft picks hit. If Tannehill stays healthy, I still think they're extending the inevitable. They're going to have to refresh everything at some point, and maybe Vrabel and Robinson could have done that if they hadn't made a couple of those mistakes. I don't know. I find it interesting, and it's a fantastic what-if game because the key is now, here's the other thing. If Cam Ward is good, even just let's say top third of the league good, there's going to be a lot of people that say it was all worth it. We got a couple of great seasons, and the suckitude for 2.5 years of bad PR, bad headlines, bad decision-making, all of it was worth it because it got us Cam Ward.
By the way, you don't have to be terrible for multiple years to get Cam Ward. You have to be bad for 1 year to get Cam Ward.
Also true. I don't know what we accomplished, but I find it interesting.
It was a good
I
conversation.
find it interesting. Sinkers Beverages, everybody. Make sure you swing by Sinkers Beverages. 4-time liquor store of the year and the craft beer retailer of the year, the best craft beer fridge in the city. So make sure you search Uber Eats. If you can't swing by, have them deliver it to you. They are locally owned and operated, big supporters of Nashville sports, whether it's the Titans or the Predators or Nashville SC. Make sure you support them. They're great and they're wonderful. They're all community people that pay attention to this stuff. They love the city. They live in the city. They operate in the city, and they're serving the city. So make sure you check them out. Sinkers Beverages there in East Nashville, of course, up there. It's just right there. It's actually right near Briley, so you can get there very easily. And, of course, their sister store, Bluegrass Beverages. So if you're in Hendersonville, Goodlettsville, the north side of town, make sure you go swing by Bluegrass Beverages up there as well. Shotgun Willie's Barbecue, 11 a.m. to 3 p.m., that Black Hawk Farms American Wagyu beef brisket. Every single Wednesday through Sunday from 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. It is the best brisket in the city, full stop, as voted on by you, the Nashvillians. So go check it out. All right, so J.C. Latham, and I'm going to talk offensive line here for a little bit. And J.C. Latham goes on Bussin' with the Boys, and he essentially says, I think expectations should be greatness. I think expectations should be high. I like, I hold myself to that account, and I looked at myself and I analyzed all the things that I've been doing, and I said, how can I get better? I think it's a great sign of maturity and leadership for J.C. Latham to be growing into this role. It might take a little more time. We'll get to the Kushberry of it all. But I think it is a sign that this is a guy that's got more to his game than just a great blocker. He could be a much bigger piece of this locker room moving forward. And I still don't have the right answer, PK, to like, how will we know? How do we know? How can we know if the offensive line is being fixed? But I think seeing J.C. Latham develop into a bigger part of the leadership community in this team is probably a pretty big development.
Yeah, he was good on there, and he was good in his conversation with a lot of us after practice last week. I'm a little puzzled by him. Like, he realized his weight was holding him back halfway through the season last year, and Callahan kind of said that, and how the Titans didn't forecast that, particularly Bill Callahan. Bill Callahan likes his offensive linemen big, but that he didn't look at J.C. Latham in college and assess his tape and forecast that the things that made J.C. Latham good, big, weren't going to work over the course of a 17-game season. Disappoints me a little bit. How do you feel about that? Like, they should have had a better sense coming in, and that they don't discover it until halfway through his rookie season, and then want him transformed into something different for his second season makes me question them a little bit.
All right, my reaction to that first and foremost is how transformative is this going to be? Like, left tackle.
I mean, they're talking about 30 pounds different, more than that. Are
you just talking body, or are you talking position as well?
Well, I think it's the same at either position. I mean, the differences between the two positions aren't as extreme as they used to be. And if you wanted them heavier, you'd want them heavier at right tackle than at left tackle, right? It's a more bullish position to a degree, though they're closer than they've ever been in terms of facing streamlined pass rushers.
Do you think that? I mean, he's still massive, dude. He's still huge.
Yeah, but he's still massive, but he's still talking about losing more.
Well, I think that's so. After seeing him, like, sort of,
yeah, I thought he still looked massive. I didn't look at him and go, "Whoa, this is a slim dude," which made me say, if he had 30 more pounds than this on him, what were they doing?
And what I would say, first of all, I think some of that is every rookie has a rookie body until they don't. That's just sort of life in the NFL. I do think that for his size and his power, one of the things I noticed, and I was talking to Coach Mack about this while we were watching sort of the offensive line drill on Tuesday, was I was just like, the dude hits things differently than everybody else. He just does. And it's just more explosion, more power. And I think I think there's a sweet spot for him. And I don't think it's an indictment of like their vision of the position for one particular guy, because he's still massive even at 25. Now, if he goes at 30 pounds less, he's still huge and powerful. If he comes back and he loses another 15 or 20 pounds, maybe we can start to say, well, what didn't you like about where did you guys miss on the evaluation of this player is what you're saying, right? And your blend of what you value
on your projection for him.
I think it remains to be seen. I mean, I want to see what he looks like. I think he can play either side. I think he could still be. I know Dan Moore's pretty young, 26 years old. I think he could still be a left tackle eventually in this league. I don't know. I don't think that's the plan. I think the plan is to keep him at right, obviously, for a while. But I think at his size, currently, offensive linemen tend to sort of get like they're not the ones who lose the weight right as the season goes along. So we'll see what happens. I'm curious. I'm curious how it all works together, because that's ultimately where we're at with the offensive line, is how is it going to work together. I think Latham's going to be a huge part of the solution. I think he's the best offensive lineman on the team potentially.
I mean, I like him a lot. I forecast a lot. I am not going to project big things for the offensive line until I see big things from the offensive line, because it just seems like it's too dangerous.
Yeah. Well, for everyone to guess that they're going to be better.
I will say, I mean, I think predicting any good things for the Titans is too dangerous.
All right, I want to ask about Cushenberry then, because that's something we haven't really talked a lot about, and that is this recovery timetable. And you put a lot of other offensive linemen in your article. Make sure you go pay for good journalism, paulkarski.com. And the question is sort of like, what can we learn? Because the human body is so individualized. Certain people can come back from an ACL in a certain amount of time, and others can't. What is the general time frame for an Achilles based on your assumptions?
10 months. And opening day will be 10 months almost on the dot for him. Offensive linemen and guys who operate in smaller space obviously have an easier time coming back from this than skill position guys. It can be a career killer for skill position guys, and has been. I talked to one of these guys who's on the internet as a doctor, rehab specialist, and he wrote a paper that said really 30% of skill position guys make it back, which is really shocking. They come back, they play for a little while, they're not the same, and then they fade out and disappear. But Elijah Vera Tucker made it back. Brandon Brooks made it back super quickly, like eight months. He tore he tore it twice, but the first time he tore it in a playoff game, and he was back for opening day. Now, the second time he tore it was near the end of his career, and it proved to be the end of his career. And one other guy who I'm going to forget also had a successful comeback. So offensive linemen have done well with this, generally speaking. And when you're more of a phone booth guy, it's easier to come back. You're not doing the same motions with that leg.
And from what I understand, it is one of those, to your point, that you can re-rupture it very easily during rehab. You can re-rupture it very quickly in the first year or two that it's back. And so it's just one of those, you just don't know, is it permanently been weakened or not? You just don't know. That's from body to body. You mentioned so Patriots first round pick Isaiah Wynn. This is a story.
Yeah, who's an injury prone guy. He never really made it back from that, because he came back from that and then did a toe, and he's a free agent now.
So I just think it's interesting to kind of lay them all out, like just the first initial injury, which is Isaiah Wynn was injured in August of 2018. He was on the field 1 year and 3 weeks later. So you're, kind of basically almost 13 months there for
yeah.
Isaiah
But see,
Wynn.
some of these, like, he probably could have been back sooner. It's where you injure it during the one season and how long you have until opening day the next year. So if you injure it early in a season, you've got a lot more time to come back.
Sure, I'm just counting the months. Like, that was a 13-month. It was a 13-month recovery for Isaiah Wynn, and then the other stuff happened, and that sort of is what it is. Brandon Brooks, January of 19, and was back about 8 months later. So Isaiah Wynn 13 months, Brandon Brooks 8 months. Then you pointed out Elijah Vera Tucker for the Jets, who was October of 2023 and was back for week 1. So that was about 11 months. So
there's a schedule one. He had a lot of time.
And that's your window. Like, that's the window. 8 months on the great end of tremendous human DNA and training and whatever. And then 13 months on the other end, which clearly Isaiah Wynn doesn't have necessarily the great human DNA to stay off the injury issue or whatever. There's also human element to all of this. How much are you putting into your recovery? How much do all the other stuff? So is it fair? Do Titans fans need to be prepared for Lloyd Cushenberry to start week 4? Where's the right? Where do you think Titans fans should place their expectation?
Yeah, 2 to 4 weeks in, maybe. I mean, I think there's a possibility that he's ready for opening day, but they've got Sam Mustipher, they've got Corey Levin, Brandon Hymus even might be a potential there. So they've given themselves some options to be ready. It'd be unfortunate if he's not out there opening day because, for them to hit the ground running and be the line that they're going to be, Kushberry's got to be a part of it. So this will slow down the whole process, obviously, if he's not. Didn't see him out there last week. He's not going to do any work, obviously, but see him walking around, you get a better sense of, where he is, how his fitness looks, all of that stuff. So we'll see. But that's the one big outside of Snead. You got Snead on the defensive side. And you got Cushenberry on the offensive side. Those are the two big guys we're monitoring, really health-wise.
Ed says, could you argue that centers have less ground to cover than tackles on the line? I think that's fair.
It's by case. You pull the center sometimes, and he's pretty agile, I think, for the position. So we'll see. And Z Dean wants to know, do you think if Slater takes center reps, that points to Cushenberry not being ready by week 1? I don't think Slater would be in line as a late draft pick to be the substitute on opening day of his rookie year.
No, but I do think Slater will be taking offensive line reps or center reps because that's where they want him to play. I think that's where I think that they're probably going to cross train him as well at guard, but I would assume he'll take center reps because they want him to learn the position as best they can at this time. But I think it's Levin for sure. Maybe there's another battle in there with somebody else. But
I think Mustipher has a lot of experience.
Yeah. So it'll be very interesting. I agree. I think we're just at the point, like on paper, it's the best offensive line I have seen since what year? 17, 18, 19? Like what's the year that on paper this one would be comparable to? And I'm not looking for specific names. I'm just saying that era.
The last year that Lawan was penciled in to play, probably, where he ultimately got hurt early.
Yeah, and from a talent perspective, that's on paper, but you also have how old is Zeitler? 34-year-old right guard. You've got a tackle switching to right tackle, who's a second-year player. You got an Achilles tear, and the guy who led the league in sacks allowed at left tackle. None of that. There's context involved in all of that, but those are just facts. Is Slater visibly
issue free?
Right. Is Slater visibly bigger than Kushberry? No, Slater is shorter.
Shorter and squattier.
But he is built. He is very his upper body, lower body, very thick.
I'd say Cushenberry's the guy that doesn't look like a center, right? Cushenberry, you don't look at him and go, oh, that's an NFL center.
No, he does not have the sawed-off frame at all, like where you want low sort of center. Like centers traditionally are sort of that, like that mean, like the mean short guy who just mauls people, like Ben Jones, basically.
Yeah.
All right. So, well, there you go. There you have it. Offensive line play. What do you expect out of anything you expect to see on Tuesday this week from OTAs that might be different?
No, I mean, it's kind of nonsensical to predict. I'm curious if the attendance is as good. I think it probably will be. There might be one or two guys, who have some kind of conflict, and so it's not quite as good. I don't imagine Simmons shows up. So curious to see if Lockett's back. He had hamstring tightness. Curious to see if Tavondre Sweat. I'm not sure exactly what he was dealing with, if he resurfaces. I imagine Zeitler will be out there. Last week was his first, he's around, I think, just for a touch in phase 1, phase 2. I think that was in phase 2. So they didn't want to just roll him out there. I think after a week they will have him out there. So that'll be something new to see.
And then last, you and I were sitting around and we were talking to Easton about this. He wrote the story about the Cam Ward using the VR headsets, which is the same technology that Jaden Daniels used last year. Not really sure, or hard to tell whether or not that had anything to do with Jaden Daniels' success or not. I do find it interesting that most, and Brian Callahan said this, I think, in the story, that most veteran quarterbacks they kind of push back on it. They're not really in favor of it, and they don't really need it necessarily. So it really does feel like sort of a get a rookie up to speed type of device or practice reps. I don't think it can hurt him, can it? Like, is there a way to train bad habits into a quarterback through VR, or is it just all positive, all net gain for a quarterback to be using this? And why isn't every team have this for for all their backup quarterbacks or rookie quarterbacks.
Well, I don't think it's a negative, but I think the case against it is that it's strictly mental, like Easton wrote, he was just flicking his wrist to make the throw. So there's nothing about it that's mechanical. Not that everything has to be mechanical, but maybe some coaches see it as, hey, it's so distant from the mechanics of the rep that I'm disassociating the mechanics from the mental, and maybe there's some risk of doing that. That's one thing I thought as I was kind of considering it. Some of these guys are tempted to be overloaded. We've heard that, they've had to kind of kick Ward out of the building and stuff. I don't know if you'd want him to take this portable thing home for fear of him overdoing it.
Is that possible for a rookie in the summer?
Yes, I think it is.
Really?
I think you want a guy to have some kind of measure. I don't know what it is, but I'm sure they have an equation for it. But
it's not physical though, right? Are you worried about the physical?
Well, I'm saying I wonder if there's an equation, and I presume there is, where if you go and do this way more than you're doing physical reps, you might throw things off kilter to some degree. And I wonder if that's not the reason somebody wouldn't have a guy do
like create some minor bad habit that you then have to coach out of them once you come back to camp or whatever. It feels
he comes back and he's on the field and he's saying, well, what I was seeing was, and they go, that wasn't real. That was VR.
Well, and here's the thing that I can't shake on this, which is the S2 test, right? It was all the thing. We talked about it. You wrote about it. We talked about it on this show. We were all in on it. It was a major concern about CJ Stroud. CJ Stroud has a great rookie season, and we haven't heard a single thing about the S2 test since. Jaden Daniels, meanwhile, has an extraordinary rookie year, probably because the organization changed its coaching staff, had a great draft class, and Jaden Daniels is very talented. But he does the VR thing, and now everyone's on the VR thing. There is an element of sort of like copycat league to some degree, and that we're quick to remove the things that all of a sudden don't seem to be as effective.
And it might be good for one guy, but that doesn't mean it's good for every guy. John Gall says, I mean, that's the same as watching film, right? It goes beyond watching film. It's like putting you in the film, and
which I think is a net positive, especially for rookies.
I think so too, but I think you're monitoring it for, how is it for your guy as opposed to it's universally good for every guy.
Well, and I think, for example, like how many reps in practice are we going to see tomorrow where he's sort of being asked to do the thing that maybe you don't do in a game, but for the sake of going through the rep and learning the practice, or, hey, he was about to get sacked. I mean, we saw this last week where the pressure happens and you roll around, it's a sack in a real game, but you still make the throw, right? And sometimes it's a good result, sometimes it's a bad result, but it's not really a rep. But but while you're running and playing, you might as well take the shot and take the rep, right? Like so it doesn't teach him anything, but there is some muscle memory happening or experience happening there that maybe is beneficial. I don't know.
Here's the other thing: the coach, and I don't know to what degree the coach is with you on this. Maybe you read into this. Is the coach able to watch this with you? That's another thing. The coach at practice is standing beside you watching it, and then you're watching the same film. Is the coach watching film of what you did in the VR, or are you on your own on it? I don't know. Go to this. Scroll up a little. ZD here. Maybe already discussed, but is signing Ty Davis Price anything? Maybe Mullins' injury more serious. Maybe they try to shop Tajay. This is where, like, why are we doing this? Like, what value does Tajay Spears have? Like, hey, we're going to pick up a scrub running back who's averaged 3 yards a carry in his career. He's never caught a pass. And that's going to enable us to trade a guy who has caught passes, but who's not been very good, doesn't have an ACL. The league is desperate for this guy that people are going to come call. Like, what's this? Help me connect here. Why does it have to mean something big? They cut a scrub. They signed a scrub. This guy's a special teamer at best. He hasn't done anything. He's nothing. This is a bottom of the roster move where they're going to churn things. Why does every tiny move have to mean that somebody's on the trade block, or they're going to make some huge manipulation. You're going to take this and you're going to do 10 dominoes, and it's going to lead to a Will Levis trade. Come on, calm down. I do this gesture sometimes to my wife when we start to get heated.
Oh, that is
fucking hates it.
It's a bad move.
It's the worst thing ever. But this is what I'm doing to you.
This is a risky
This is
move.
a much more appropriate use of it.
Wow, you are bolder than I thought you were. Woo. Yeah. So we're back, guys. Everything's back to normal. PK versus the comment section. I'm with PK on this one. so we're back, but man, I cannot.
No, it doesn't mean they're looking into trading
with...
Spears. It means they're looking into trading Pollard.
Yeah, there you go. I can't agree with you on the calm down, honey gesture to the wife.
Terrible.
I can't.
I know, move. Right? It's a lift a hand, and it's.
Dude, you ever catch yourself? You're just like, and you just stop. Do you just stop right away?
I'm just doomed from the beginning.
Oh, now this is what we should get into: is how do you take this personality that has led you to such a great reporting career?
I don't.
And a great journalism career, and how does it apply to your marriage and your communication style?
Very poorly.
She's like, why aren't you just curious about my life, Paul? Okay, why can't you just dig into my life a little bit?
Does not translate at all well.
Oh, come on, that's all you're gonna give us? Come on.
Yeah, we're not going the level we went on you being a realtor.
I'm not a realtor. I'm a mogul. It's different.
On you being a landlord, I meant.
It's different.
Mogul. Now he's a mogul. Before he wouldn't talk about it. Now he's calling himself a mogul. Look,
I might be looking at a third one, PK. I might want to go buy a third one, you know?
Good for you.
Yeah, you never know. Josh says my couch isn't comfortable enough for that gesture. Good to hear from you, Josh. That's good stuff. Calm down. Oh, my face hurts. That's so. I just picturing you telling your wife to calm down. It's one of the greatest things I've thought of in at least a week.
Yeah, I shouldn't have.
In at least a week.
Shouldn't have gone there.
Oh, whew.
Shouldn't have gone there then. Shouldn't have gone there. Man, should never go there.
No. I think here you've been self-deprecating enough to acknowledge that it was your fault and that she would be pleased by the fact that we're all making fun of ourselves as husbands. I think that's okay.
Well, certainly make fun of me.
Yeah, well, me too. I do the same thing for a few years, and then I learned not to.
John says KC constantly churned out and squeezed value out of running backs. Yeah, that Edwards-Helaire, phenomenal. They squeezed so much value out of that.
I mean, Pacheco's a pretty good player. They got value out of Kareem Hunt, who was washed, kind of. You know, like, what do you mean?
Beating people up. What was the charge against him?
Am I saying you should bring that person onto this team? No, I'm just saying. You know, Clyde Edwards-Helaire is not the end all. I mean, he doesn't define the entire
huge draft capital on him, right? First round, second round.
I think he was second. Breaking news: Kuharsky household takes a chill pill. Paul's wife is behind the camera. He's scared for his life.
She's not.
Oh, look at that! Wow. That was fast. All right. Okay. Clyde Edwards-Helaire was a first rounder, QC. I think you're right. I think you're right about that. That is a bad use of resources on an LSU running back that should have had a better pro career, honestly.
Is he out of the league? Is he out of the league or is he on their IR?
He played last year. He had some snaps. He had a bunch of snaps last year, I think. All right. That's it. Go to Shotgun Willie's Barbecue, but not on Mondays and Tuesdays, just Wednesdays through Sundays from 11 a.m.
Not after 1 o'clock.
3 p.m. No, 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. Yeah, 3.
I can't get the hours straight because you don't share them enough here.
Search Sinkers Beverages. Search Sinkers Beverages on Uber Eats. Have the booze delivered directly to your house. Don't let them do the driving so you can do the drinking. There you have it. All right. PaulKuharsky.com is the website. Make sure you check them out. Nick and I will be back, of course, on Thursday. So we're going to have lots to discuss as all the Titans are going to be available on Tuesday. We're going to have a chance to watch the practice again. And so we'll be back on Thursday morning to break it all down. Check out Paul Kuharsky podcast as well. And best of luck explaining to your wife the end of this show.
I think everybody should try that just to see how it goes.
Report back.
Give it a shot and report back, please.
Just be careful. just be careful, everybody. For Paul, I'm Braden. Thanks for listening. Thanks for hanging out. We'll talk to you next time.